Electric cars were once the future, but did you know they're facing big challenges now? Rising costs, limited charging stations, and other issues might make buying an EV a huge mistake. Before you buy, discover why investing in an EV might be a huge mistake. Just a few years ago, the idea of electric cars going mainstream seemed like a far-off dream. Gas-powered vehicles had ruled the roads for over a century, but things changed rapidly in the early 2020s as electric vehicle technology improved and climate concerns increased demand for green transportation. Elon Musk's Tesla led the charge, rolling out sleek, long-range EVs that captured buyers' imaginations. Suddenly, having an eco-friendly electric car became a must-have status symbol for the environmentally conscious and tech-savvy. Other automakers hurried to catch up, each unveiling their own electric models. By 2023, the electric vehicle revolution was in full swing. That year, a staggering 1.2 million new EVs were sold across the United States, shattering previous records. Electric cars had grabbed 7.6% of the total market, a level that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years prior. Leading the charge was Tesla, which accounted for over half of those EV sales at 55% market share. Though its dominance had slipped slightly, the pioneering company remained the undisputed leader in the electric vehicle space. Who was buying these electric cars? Looking under the hood, some clear trends emerged about who was driving this electric vehicle boom. The buyers tended to be fairly affluent. About 60 to 75% had household incomes topping $100,000 per year, depending on the data source. This made some sense, as EVs carried hefty price premiums over comparable gas models, but it also hinted at a troubling divide where only the well-off could afford to go electric. Additionally, the EV market skewed heavily towards male buyers. One source claimed a whopping 75% of electric vehicle purchases were made by middle-aged men. Whether based on personal preferences, purchasing influences, or other factors, women made up a distinct minority in early EV adoption. On the surface, the future looked bright for electric cars in 2023. Sales were booming, and EVs were clearly transitioning from an eco-niche into a mainstream vehicle choice for many buyers. But storm clouds were gathering on the horizon that would shake the industry to its core. The first major warning sign came from an unlikely source: rental car giant Hertz. Hertz had previously made a big gambit on electric vehicles, purchasing thousands to add to their fleets in hopes of leading the rental industry into an eco-friendly future. But in early 2024, they made a surprising about-face. Hertz announced they were selling off around 20,000 EVs, a staggering 50% of their entire electric fleet. Other rental companies like Enterprise soon followed suit and sharply pulling back on their EV purchases. Their reason? The cold hard math showed EVs were proving to be far more expensive to maintain and repair compared to traditional gas vehicles. Between costly battery replacements, specialized repair equipment, and frequent damage issues, rental operators were bleeding money by keeping electric cars on the road. This was the antithesis of what rental firms wanted: affordable, durable vehicles that could be purchased cheaply, rented out at high volume, and kept running with minimal maintenance costs. Hertz's startling reversal was the first crack in electric vehicles' momentum. As 2024 got underway, more worrying signs began emerging that buyer demand for EVs was losing steam. While sales hadn't completely fallen off a cliff, a once red-hot acceleration had stalled out. Electric vehicles simply weren't flying off dealer lots like they had the year before. Surveys and market data illustrated this slowdown. The author's own survey of over 11,000 people revealed only 7% were interested in purchasing a fully electric vehicle as their next car, matched by EVs' current 7.6% market share, but a steep drop from the feverish demand of previous years. What was causing this cooling of demand? A combination of factors and harsh realities were giving potential buyers pause. For one, the spotty state of electric vehicle infrastructure across many regions cast doubt over EVs' practicality for everyday use. Highly publicized issues like rolling blackouts in California, triggered partially by overwhelming electricity demand for charging car batteries, underscored the shaky ground utilities faced. How could Americans be expected to confidently switch to EVs if the power grids couldn't even reliably support existing charging needs? Despite the continual pledges to upgrade and EV-proof the electrical infrastructure, progress was coming up short in many areas. In 2023, California made international headlines by announcing an ambitious plan to phase out sales of new gas-powered cars by 2035 in favor of only allowing EVs. Just days later, the state had to plead with residents to reduce power usage, including charging electric cars, to prevent more rolling blackouts from overloaded systems. But an even bigger factor driving away potential EV purchasers was the devastating depreciation levels plaguing electric cars, especially used models. Even brand new EVs were depreciating rapidly. Within just the first year of ownership, drivers could expect to see 50% or more of their new electric car's value evaporate. This was unheard of compared to traditional gas vehicles, where loss rates of 10% after year one were more typical. The root cause was a perfect storm sinking used EV values. Frequent battery replacements and repair costs made operating costs for used EVs untenable. At the same time, a flood of vehicles was hitting the second-hand market. Used rental EVs from companies like Hertz, purging their fleets, saturated the space with high-mileage electric cars former owners could barely give away. Making matters worse, anxiety over EVs' long-term viability as new battery technologies emerge made buyers hesitant to commit to older electric cars that could be obsolete in just a few years. Some horror stories emerged of people who had purchased new $70,000 Tesla sedans only to watch them become worth under $30,000 just 1 year later after price cuts and other factors torched resale levels. Predictably, this tsunami of depreciating EVs caused the other shoe to drop. Dealers began refusing to accept used electric cars as trade-ins at all. The risk of getting stuck with a car worth half its purchase price in just months was too great. Those dealers that did grudgingly accept EVs as trades were lowballing their offers to downright insultingly low levels. According to the author's contacts, it became common for dealers to offer 10 to 20% below standard trade-in pricing for used EVs, essentially treating them like salvage vehicles. The cold hard numbers meant anyone who purchased an EV from a dealer, whether new or old, was facing a potential financial wipeout down the road when it came time to trade it in again. Even people who could initially afford a $60,000 or $70,000 electric vehicle were finding themselves trapped. With trade-in values a mere fraction of what they paid, the typical route of using the old car's equity as a down payment was completely cut off. These EV owners were staring at losses of $30,000, $40,000, or more just to get out of their car and into a new one after a few years. But with the shortcomings in battery technology, infrastructure, and saturated second-hand market, those hopes were dashed. Tales spread of people stuck making payments on EVs now worth a quarter of what they initially paid. Caught between a rock and a hard place, it's no surprise that excitement and demand for electric vehicles started deflating in 2024. Anecdotal evidence suggested more people were discussing their plans to steer clear of EVs for their next purchase, at least until resale value stabilized. For current EV owners facing inevitable financial losses, the wisest plan became diving their electric cars into the ground until the batteries were depleted after 8 to 10 years. Only then would it make any economic sense to swap it for a new ride. So who was left still ardently embracing EVs? The wealthy car enthusiast who could easily absorb depreciation hits, and the devoted environmental purist for whom an EV's green cred mattered more than finances. But for the mainstream car buyer, prioritizing budgets and value took precedence. The EV's once bright halo had lost its luster, at least for the time being. Seeing the wavering demand and financial fallout facing EV buyers, automakers began rethinking their strategies in 2024. The all-electric future certainly hadn't arrived as swiftly as predicted just a year or two prior. Car companies like Ford, GM, Toyota, and others slowed their EV investment and product pipelines. There was simply no sense flooding the market with electric vehicles that could quickly become disastrous financial anchors for their new owners. Instead, they refocused on more economical interim solutions to reducing emissions and improving efficiency. Smaller turbocharged gas engines, plug-in hybrids, and traditional hybrids took center stage while they continued developing more robust, future-proof EV tech. Automakers knew consumers wanted environmentally friendly options, but not at the cost of crippling their finances or transportation reliability. Until EV battery costs dropped, charge times improved, and second-hand values stabilized, caution became the name of the game. And that's a wrap. The electric vehicle market has big challenges, but with new ideas and teamwork, they can be fixed. If you're thinking about buying an EV, research carefully. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates on mobility.